Frozen Tundra Football League.
Well, welcome back to all of my friends and fellow FTFLers and anyone who might have just happened upon this show. I know it probably doesn't happen, but then again, I am not here to offend. That's right, it is I, host of the show, not only in just a show, but the longest running weekly episodic fantasy football update show out there, the FTFL Weekly Update. I am back in the ice cave and back where I belong, in the playoffs. That's right, 2 years running. But let's be clear, this is not a show about me. Now, this past week, I may have been in California, but I was definitely feeling Minnesota, and I'm glad to be back in the cold, and I'm glad to be back here. Now, I mentioned I'm in the playoffs. Another individual joined me in the 8-win club. Now remember, Adam Swart had already flip-flopped his way to 8 wins after admittedly quitting and saying his team was garbage. I guess that's a tactic. But myself and Sid are now also at 8. One team who doesn't find himself there yet is Peter. At one point, and I believe I'm going to talk about this, and my special guest this week will also muse on this, if you will. At one point, Peter was 6-2. Since then, he has gone 1-4. He is now 7-6 and in danger of missing the playoffs altogether. With 3 people in, it only means there are 3 spots remaining. Now, Adam Saltmarsh and John Linkowitz, you are out. Begin planning for the 2022 edition of the FTFL season, which leaves 5. Let me do the math here. 3, 5. That's right. Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. 5 teams vying for 3 spots. If you checked out the message board, the wonderful Commissioner Sid Hagan posted all of the different scenarios that could play out, and my goodness gracious, I, for one, am glad I'm already in the playoffs, because it is fixing to get ugly. Now, one of the teams that's not in the playoffs, Adam Saltmarsh. And I've talked a lot this year about Adam Saltmarsh and his running backs, and just how pitiful, how putrid, how awful that situation has been. But what we haven't really touched on is just how few points Adam Saltmarsh has scored on the season. Right now, he sits at 927. If he gets his average this week, he will finish below 1,000 points on the season. The last time we had that happen was in 2013. And if memory serves me correct, that is before we added a half point per reception and a flex player. Adam Saltmarsh is in uncharted waters here. Woo! And with that, I can't help but think if the DSM stays, he's got to be a front runner for that. As we head now into the final week of the regular season, injuries are piling up, COVID lists are filling up, and everyone is fighting the war of attrition. Who is going to make it to the finish line and really the starting line of the playoffs, and who is going to be left with their head in their hands wondering what could have been? On to the games, and on to one individual who fits that last description to a T. The Valhalla Hammerless Vandals, might I add, at 7-5, taking on Make America Great Again at 7-5. Battle for first place, battle for the pole position for a first round bye by winning the not nearly as dominant as the North-South division. 103.5 for Sid, 87.5 for Peter. Sid at one point was 4-4. He is now 8-5. Remember, Peter was 6-2. Now he is 7-6. Where Peter has gone 1-4 in his last 5, Sid has gone 4-1. It is peaking at the right time. Justin Jefferson, I think my guest later might muse on this a little bit. Acquired in that trade earlier in the season, 23.5 points for him. Kirk Cousin 18. Chris Godwin 17.5, which was a big score. However, did you see his numbers? Dude had 15 catches for 143 yards. If we were handing out points per reception, if this was an ESPN era Yahoo league, he would have been in the 30s. Without even scoring a touchdown, big week for him. Austin Eckler, Antonio Gibson both notched 14.5. Mark Ingram in flex duty, only 1/2 point, and Ingram's value will plummet next week as Alvin Kamara comes back just in time. Woo! If you are Peter, Brady got to start because, well, Patrick Mahomes had a bye. 30 points for him, 17 points for the Colts defense. The Colts defense? I don't think that's right. Yeah, I think that says the Colts defense. Matt Gay and Rob Gronkowski both with 16 points. By the way, George Kittle. Remember that guy that Peter cut his second-round pick? George Kittle. 32.5 points this week. Now, if I use that math that Miss Peterson taught me all those years ago, that is a 16.5 point difference. And if I'm looking at this correctly, oh, Peter, you lost by 16 points. Ooh. Ouch. Boy, oh boy. Peter and this collapse making a solid case and fighting Saltmarsh for what would be, I guess, Peter's first DSUM. The other problem with Peter this week, which is definitely going to come back later when we talk about the DSUM, 3 running backs and 2 receivers in his lineup combined for 8.5 points. By the way, that wasn't either of his running backs, Darrell Henderson and Jordan Howard, who didn't play. Both of them were out. Now, I know maybe Peter wasn't aware if you don't start a full lineup, you don't get, that costs you $5. Now, in this situation, I'm looking at what happened, and I know what happened. Peter has 7 running backs on his roster. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, 5, 6, but 7 running backs, and none of them were playing this week. Not one. Because of injuries, because of buys. Not one single player. So, I'm sure he looked at it and said, well, I don't want to pick up another running back. I don't want to spend another $1 or $2, but it would have been cheaper than 5. And we have, by the way, I think the first time ever 7 running backs on a roster tallied 0 points for a week. That is, I mean, I don't even know what to call that. That's Saltmarsh territory. I don't know. That's unique. We saw a unicorn, folks. Sid moves on to first place. Peter falls to second, and it's just free fall mode. Another team who seems to be falling is late Manah 4-time Lucky Pants, belt stealing, breaking, and entering champ Manah coming into 6-6, taking on the Pack Attack in 6-6. Another huge game with playoff implications. Eric, in the end, nudged this one in his favor, 85-72. Cooper Kupp, 18. Russell, stupid face Wilson, 16. Leonard Fournette, 15.5. Leonard Fournette this year is the 5th best running back. Now, Eric on his roster also still has the 4th best running back, Derrick Henry, who hasn't played in 5 weeks. Yet, he is still the 4th best running back on the list. Also, Greg Zero Line 11, Hunter Renfrow 10.5. Eric got a very, very much needed win. He wins this next week, and most likely he will be in. Loses, and it could get interesting if your marksman Jonathan Taylor continues to be a stud. But as I watch, are you nervous, Jeff, that they're using Jonathan Taylor in the way that the Titans used Derrick Henry? Now, you ditched Derrick Henry because you felt he was being used too much. Now, Jonathan Taylor is younger. Boy, oh boy, is he having himself a season. Elijah Mitchell, 11.5. Jalen Waddle, fresh off his first start of the season for Manah's team, 10.5 points. Jeff's problem, though, was Derek Carr, his quarterback. For the second week in a row, his quarterback position bit him in the ass. 4 points for Derek Carr, 26 points for the newly acquired Taysom Hill. However, those points don't count when he's sitting on the bench. Now, back to that trade that Jeff made where he got rid of his original quarterback, Jameis Winston, which, of course, now we know got hurt and it wouldn't have mattered. Winston, Taylor, and Will Fuller combined for 20 points. Johns, Herbert, Connor, and Hopkins, who we're going to talk about next, combined for 33. Thus, making John, now Hopkins didn't even play, so not in the starting lineup still, 33 points in the starting lineup as opposed to the 40 he would have gotten, making John 9-0 in the point totals from that trade. Now, Jeff got a second-round pick. Jeff has a really good keeper. But something tells me Jeff wouldn't mind having the production that James Conner has had. Now, you didn't know. I understand. But right now you're staring at 6 and 7. Well, Eric moves on to 7 and 6. Next up, the Hulkamaniacs coming in at 7 and 5, taking out Team Linkowitz at 4 and 8. This one was huge. Win and I'm in the playoffs. Lose and now I'm part of this big jumbled pile of meat mess or whatever we want to call it that is the last few teams battling for the final playoff spot. And going into the late part of the afternoon game, Baltimore-Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh scores a touchdown with about 2 minutes to go, thus taking away the last 5 points John's defense was going to get for holding their opponent down. And Pat Freiermuth caught a 2-point conversion, 2.5 points, so a 7.5 point swing, which all of a sudden meant Monday night, I was only down 15.5. I would need 16 between two players. Big time, windy event. I needed a touchdown, and I really was hoping for a big touchdown, and I got it, and barely much more, but it was enough, 75 to 72.5. For me, Keenan Allen led the way with 18.5. Damian Harris, 16 points, had a huge touchdown run, came up a little lame on the end of it, came back in, got a few more yards, was 1 yard away, went out with the hamstring, came back in for one final run, 22 yards, 2 more points. Now, Singletary got me a couple more. Carson Wentz in his lone spot start for me, I hope, because now he had to be there because Aaron Rodgers had a bye, but rest assured, Rodgers was there cheering on his teammates with a broken freaking toe, and the cheering, boy, oh boy, it helped. If you're John, the season is now officially over, even though Justin Herbert got to 20, James Conner got 13. 5 of his players were at 5 or below. Joe Mixon had only 8 points. This was tied for his second lowest performance since week 7. The dude has been on a tear. Would have been nice for John to have a few more of those points. Still, John making the playoffs was an absolute long shot, but now it is over. And over is what I am now with at least talking about games for a little bit, because I am going to make way for my dear friend and sometimes spot guest on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I give you Macho's Musings. Oh, yeah! Oh, yeah! Oh, yeah, that's right. Look who it is. It's the Macho Man. Yeah, Macho Man, and here to muse. Here to spill a little few of my thoughts to get it down, get it out of my head and in front of all of you. Yeah! Now, it is almost the end of the season. Almost the end of the season. 1 week left of the regular season. Yeah! And every year we get to this point, and let me tell you what happens. The cream rises to the top. Yep, the cream rises to the top. Yeah, we've got cream at the top. We've got Liquid Schwartz. Yeah, we've got Make Creamerica Great Again. And then, who would have thunk it? Not I. No, not I. No, the Hulkamaniac. The Snakeamaniacs. Yeah. Don't take that the wrong way. No! There was a trade between the Hulkamaniacs and Make Creamerica Greater Again. And I would say that trade has probably worked out in Sid's favor. And Hulkamaniacs have found a way. Yeah, they found a way. Now, where the cream rises to the top, let me tell you what sinks to the bottom. That's the turds. Yep, that's the turd. Turds are at the bottom, all the way down, all the way down. Yeah, all the way down. And let me tell you who's all the way down. Adam Saltmar. Radioactive Monkeys might not even score 1,000 points this year. That's right. Let me tell you that again. Might not even score 1,000 points this year. You've got to almost be trying. Turd is sunk to the bottom now. 2 more turds, 2 more, yeah. 2 more that earlier this season, the Macho Man, yeah. I had a few things to say about these teams in particular. Now, some may say I am the great predictor. I am the great fortune teller. I am the great Machostradamus, yeah. And I could have saw it coming. I told you. I said, architect, I would keep your mouth quiet. I wouldn't talk a lot. I wouldn't say much. Once upon a time, you were 4-2. You enter this last week at 6-7. 6-7. 2-5 over your last 7 games. Are you a turd heading down, or are you cream rising to the top? Yet to be seen. But one last person, yeah, one last team that I know is really on its way down. That's right, Mr. Valhalla Vandals. Coming in, lots of young players, not a lot of depth. I said couldn't fight your way out of a wet paper sack. And then it looks like you were all caught inside that wet paper sack. Yeah, I can't find your way out. The only way out is through the bottom and on your way down. 6-2. The Architect was 4-2. You were 6-2 at one point in time. You are now just 7-6. Yes, right. And you're one game away from losing out and missing the playoffs altogether. Yeah. You are not the cream, you are more the turds. Yeah, and the Macho Man has mused, the Macho Man has spoken. And I have one last thing. Dang it! All right, well, that, my friends, was the Macho Man. He does not mince words. Let's move on to the games. Liquid Schwartz coming in 8-4, first place in the North. Can he win and clinch his first round bye, or does he have to fight for it next week, taking on the Mixing Cocktails, who are fighting for their playoff lives? This one, just as the wind aided me in my game, the wind didn't give you, Adam Swart, any favors. Mixing Cocktails 100, Liquid Schwartz 84. I already talked about him earlier. Andy leading the way for Andy. George Kittle 32.5 points. Sony Michel finally did something, not for me, sadly, 15.5 points. Miami's defense 12, CD Lamb 11, Dak Prescott 10, Travis Kelce only 1.5 points. So yeah, I misspoke earlier when I said Kansas City was on a bye for Peter. Not the Kelce type numbers. Andy's team is hanging, and Andy's team has a lot of potential. Can he start the right quarterback? I guess it'll be yet to be seen as he heads into his final regular season game. If you're Adam Swart, boy oh boy, David Montgomery would tie the season high with 18 points leading the way. Alexander Madison in what might be one of only 2 starts he gets, because Cook sounds like he is going to be back most likely. Not for this week's games, but for the first week of the playoffs, which would be great. 15.5 for Madison, 10 for Allen and Josh Allen and TJ Hawkinson. Adam Thielen, half point, got injured. He's going to be out this week. You have relied heavily on him over the last few weeks. Going to be a problem not having him in there. T. Higgins, 18.5 points on the bench. Now, you're probably not going to start T. Higgins over Adam Thielen. However, if you would have, you would have won. Instead, you lost 8-5. Andy moves to 7-6. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, the Architect coming in at 5-7, taking on the last gasp radioactive monkeys at 4-8. And last gasp indeed. 82 for the Architect, who has now won 2 in a row after a 5-game skid. 45.5 points for the Radioactive Monkeys. If you're the Architect, Matt Stafford led the way with 22. Josh Jacobs, 16.5. The Cowboys defense, 16 points. Elijah Moore, 13 points. Zeke, 3 points. Zeke, they gave him a pile of money. I think they're still on the hook for a pile of money next year, but after that, he's gone, and who knows if he's even going to be motivated to play. Adam Saltmarsh, for I believe the 3rd straight week in a row, led in scoring by Daniel Carlson. This season has been rough, and in some ways, thankfully for Adam Saltmarsh, it is finally over. You have one last game. You could probably play spoiler. That would be the goal now. The one bright spot here, though, for the first time in several weeks, Salty's running backs combined for more than 10 points. Miles Sanders, 9.5. Clyde Edwards-Helaire with 5.5 points. 15 combined. That brings his starting running back total combined for the season to 96 points over 13 games. Other running backs in the league who have at least that, 19 of them. Up from 21 last week, but still, the watch now is, will Saltmarsh break 1,000 points, or will he be one of the lower scoring teams in the newer era of the FTFL? All right, time for the stud, the dud, and the D. Some stud of the week, George Kittle, 32.5 points. Easy money on that one. Dud of the week, Peter's running backs. Jesus. How do you have 7 running backs in your roster and not one? Not a single one gets a point, which means you are this week's decent nomination. And by the way, being 1-4 and completely just imploding upon yourself is also going to have you in part of the conversation. I've been talking about it all year. I said this team is good in the starting lineup, but it didn't have any depth and depth never materialized. And now you're staring down the barrel of what could be something just truly awful. All right, week 14. This is it. The last and final regular season week. The extra regular season week that we have not played to date. Valhalla Vandals 7-5 taking on in a winner goes to the playoffs game. The Mixin' Cocktails, at 7-6, taking on the Mixin' Cocktails at 7-6. This one's easy. Win and you are in. If they were to tie, I think Sid would probably cry himself to sleep. Let's hope that that's not the case. The other big one of the week is myself at 8-5, taking on Mana, 4-time Lucky Pants, belt stealing, breaking and entering, but didn't vandalize my house champ Mana at 6-7. If I win, Swart loses, 2-time division winner, back-to-back. If Markser wins, he's most likely going to be in the playoffs. It will not be guaranteed. Pack Attack coming in at 7-6, taking on the Monkeys at 4-9. If Eric wins, he is in the driver's seat to go to the playoffs. Liquid Schwartz 8-5, again looking to win the division, coming in taking on Team Linkowitz, who would like to play spoiler at 4-9. And lastly, Make Kramerica Great Again at 8-5, taking on the Architect at 6-7. The word war has been flying on that one. Matt's got to win and needs lots of help. Sid is just looking for a first round bye. And with that, we get ready for the final week of the regular season, and then the real games begin. But until then, my friends, peace! Dude, yeah, California was fun, but I don't want to talk about California. I want to talk, that's what I want to talk about. 2 years running, playoff participant. I don't remember the last time I made the playoffs back-to-back. Yes, I know the last time I won was in 2003. But hey, that's why I enlisted your help this year, and look where we are. Yes, we'll meet sometime next week. I'll get you the second part of your money, and boy, oh boy, let me tell you what, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling pretty excited. People are going to be coming back from injuries. I mean, you know what, I'm not even going to say it. Don't want to put it out there. Just a simple thank you, and yeah, have a great weekend. We'll see you soon, buddy. Peace out. I can't wait.